Hi guys, so here we have question number 4. See if I can zoom a little bit. Okay. So this question is very similar from question number 3. You want to know here the amount, okay, and the cost. And okay, so question number 4 is, a patient has a nutritional deficiency and is told to take at least 2,400 milligrams of iron, 2,100 milligrams of vitamin B1, 1,200 milligrams of vitamin B2. Two alternative multivitamins pills are available to the patient. The vitamin content of each is shown on the table below. Okay, so you have like he needs to take like this amount here of nutrients, right? And then he found two options of multivitamins that contains like an amount of these nutrients as well. So he needs iron, B1 and B2. And this is the cost per pill, right? So the first multivitamin is called Maxivite, and the second one is Healthivite. So the amount of iron. So the first one has more iron than the second, and B1. The second one has more B1. Vitamin B2, the first one has less than the second as well. So far, second one has more vitamin B1 and B2, but the first one has more iron. This amount is like 4 times higher than this one is also 4 times higher, and this one, like the difference seems to be minimum. And okay, this is also milligram, just like the amount that the person needs. So this is the cost per pill. So we know that the second one costs a little bit more per pill than the first one that has lower vitamin B1, B2, but has like more of iron. So the question in the question is being asked is, what combination of Maximum Health pills will meet the patient's vitamin requirements at the lowest cost? So he can combine these two multivitamins, and he wants to know which kind of combination is going to give like the lowest cost. So if it's the lowest cost, we know that we're not dealing here with the max, just like in the previous question that we did. Here that we use the max, right, to maximize the revenue. That's not the case. We're minimizing. We want the lowest cost in this case, right? So to resolve this exercise, we're gonna use the same kind of like idea. First, we're gonna put the input, and for that, we're gonna write the cost for one and for the other, and then each of these variables. I mean, we didn't have to write it down. We could just like grab the amounts from here. But if we write it down as an input, it's gonna be easier for us like to just do like the calculation to calculate the cost, right? So it's just gonna be easier. So let's start adding the input. Okay, input here. So we're gonna start like with the price, the cost per pill. So first I'm gonna add the 2. So these are our 2 products. Okay, so this is gonna be the cost per pill. Then I'm just gonna follow here, iron, and then vitamin B1, vitamin B2. So I'm just gonna look at the first one. Oh, this is the cost over here. Two cost. Perfect. So now we're gonna add our decision variable. For the decision variable, what is the question that is being asked here? So which combination of both of them are gonna give the lowest cost, right? So which combination means like how many of them to produce. So how many pills to produce of each multivitamins. Okay, so we also have like separated by each. So this I'm also gonna put in orange because that's gonna be like our solver here. In the light orange because we entered these amounts. So after our decision variable, the next one is going to be our objective, right? So I'm just going to write here. Our model objective. I'm going to table here. So the goal is to have the lowest cost, right? So the variables is like how many to produce of each, and the goal is to produce at the lowest cost possible. Okay, so lowest cost. We have the same ones here. So you have the lowest cost for this, the lowest cost for this, and then you have a cost for both of them. So this is gonna be the total cost here, just like we had in the previous example. So the cost for this is gonna be the price times the demand, right? The amount of units that we're gonna receive with solver. So right now it's 0, but whenever we have this amount here, this number is gonna be populated, right? And the total cost is gonna be the sum equals sum select both or just one plus the other. And this number here is very important. Okay. This is what we're gonna use in the solver. Just select this. Perfect. Wait. Okay. So This is the step one, the variable. And then the step number two is the objective. So now we're gonna go like to the constraint. Constraints. So what is in the way of like producing this? It means that one can only be like the amount of iron or the amount of vitamin B2 or the amount of vitamin B1 are different, right? In the other example, it was the constraint where like the one professional could not work more than such and such hours, but now here, one vitamin can only have this amount of certain nutrients, right? So these are the constraints here. Um, so we're gonna have the actual that's gonna be given by the solver, by the sum product, and then we have the operator, and that we're gonna use in the solver, and then we have the constraint, which is the number that we're gonna input because we know how many they have, like how many they need to have. So you need to have 2400 of iron, 2100 of B1, and 1200 of vitamin B2. So these are our constraints. So the first one is iron, right? Iron intake that he needs, right? And then the first is going to be the B1 intake or requirements or something like that. And then the second one is B2. Vitamin B2. Okay, so iron is saying 2400 milligrams. The second one it's saying 2100. The other one is saying 1200. Okay, so it's the keyword here is saying at least, right? So at least this is very important when it's, especially because it's talking about medicine, right? Because let's say like depending on the medicine that can be like poisonous for you to take like more than like if you exceed. So it could be like no more than, but in this case, like he has a deficiency of a certain nutrient, so then he needs to take at least. So if it's at least, it's not an exact amount, it's 2400 milligrams or more, right? So we're gonna add this amount here. Did I add in the right place here? So the actual value needs to be higher or equal, right? And these amounts are gonna be the sum product that we saw before. Just gonna format. So now I just like change the formatting here. So now this amount we saw before, they're gonna be the sum product. We could also like do them calculating like one times the other plus one times the other, but what we're gonna do is equal sum product, and then how much of iron is gonna be our actual intake after you know how many pills are gonna be produced. So it's gonna be the amount of iron here, and I can do the combination of the multivitamin, right? Both of them, because it's gonna be a mix. This is the first array, and then the second is gonna be the demand, like the actual amount of pills. So this is the iron. Okay, something that we can do here as well is to lock, so Fn, Fn, and F4 to lock this one. So the second amount, the C is gonna be blocked. Okay, perfect. So now we can just drag the other two down and see if they're getting, yes, B1, B2, perfect. So always remember that this part here is the sum product formula, right? And this one is because of at least, right? So because it says at least, you know that is higher than. So at least these are the amounts given in the question. So because they're given, let me put them in orange. Okay. So the amounts given are like in orange. This one comes from the question, right? And this one you have the cost per pill. Okay. Cost per pill and then each of them. Okay, so now we're just gonna run the solver, and one thing that is important to remember is we want the lowest cost, so it's gonna be the minimum amount here, right? Let me zoom out a little bit. So two important things for the solver. This amount here is what we're gonna change, right? And this amount is what we're gonna actually use. So to run the solver, we're gonna go to data and then solver. So our objective, okay, is gonna be total cost. Most of the times like profit or revenue, total revenue, something like that. It's not max, it's gonna be minimum. We know here that it's not a winner. We're always gonna use the simplex, right? Thanks to the 1947 mathematician. And what we're gonna change here, so we're gonna change the how many pills to produce, right? Okay, so this two. And now we're gonna add the constraints. So the constraints are here, right? We're gonna have to add this amount, and they need to be larger than the other amount. Take some time. And so the actual value here, that is a sum product. We don't have any amounts because there is no amount here yet. So they need to be higher or equal than this amounts that were given. And the other thing is that we don't want the total cost, or we don't want the, adding another one. Okay. So one very important thing here as well, cell reference. Okay. I don't want the multivitamins to be 0, so it needs to be higher than 0. Let's take some time. So keep solver solution. Okay. So there we have it. So we have the amounts here. See, it was populated, and here it was populated too, not because of the solver, but because we have an amount here. So the sum product here actually gave us a value. We also have like when you do the solver, oh, take like a screenshot to replace this part here. Okay, we still have it here, so that's fine. I'm just gonna take a screenshot. Close this because I don't want any solver now. I'm just gonna replace this picture. Perfect. So how many of these pills we're gonna produce? This is gonna be equal. This one. How many of these pills we're gonna produce? Oh, yeah, exactly. See? And then here you want to know the actual cost. So for the cost, we go to the profit. And there we have it. So this is our question. It's very simple. Do you order here for the cost? For example, I could put it in the end just like it's here, it doesn't matter. But just like we have to remember that is the cost times the demand. Right? The cost times the amount of pills produced, right? That is gonna be important here in our calculation. We also have to remember here that it's the lowest cost. This at least here is very important. The numbers that are given here, we know that there are constraints, right? So these numbers are all like very important to use in the constraints. Oh, I thought I had right. Apparently not. Okay. So yeah, and just like in the previous questions, like this things here were very useful right here. So the decision variables, the objective, the constraints. So in the case like the decision variables were like the two types of the vitamins. The objective was to obtain like the lowest cost, and the constraints were like the limitations because we needed at least 2400 milligrams of iron and the 21 and 1200 of B1 B2. These are the constraints. So the objective function like we wrote. Okay, so these were like the examples, right? So cannot exceed, or at least, or must contain, or must be exactly. In many cases, in medication, it could be like exactly, right? So this case here, types of constraints, we just saw like by for illustration purpose, like that you could have like proportion or balance, simple bounds. The sum product we saw like in the previous exercise that we could like just multiply both numbers and then add with the other multiplication, but the sum product is easier initially. So we saw that initially here we're gonna have 0 because we are not gonna have this amount here. But once these amounts are populated by the solver, you're gonna be actually able to see, and these are like the actual amount given this production that gives it the lower cost, right? These are the constraints. So this is what we have. And we're telling like solver that you need more. You're telling solver that these numbers here need to be higher, like they need to be more, right? At least this equals to this number. Uh so then that's why you have like this number here needs to be higher than this amount. If they're lower, there's something wrong with the formula. Maybe you didn't use the right operator, right? It just shows like the solver, the simplex LP that we remember, how the solver works, the 1947 gentleman, they made our job easier. Thanks Excel for making it easier as well. Okay, so let's get question 3, and I used the max, right? Because they wanted to maximize the revenue, and in this case here, we'll use the min because we want to know the lowest cost. So this was the question. Very simple. So now we are ready for question number 5.